actually, small reminder is that the first steps that we have to refer to whenever we talk about generating a query or interrogating a database or a backend store, the format of each query, the syntax, then after we execute and we test four steps that would, let's say, prohibit us from making any errors or forgetting any step or getting out of the context. All of those, let's say, issues we may trespass by respecting the format only. List operators. Just I'll discuss again the context of the range operator and the list operator, the range operator of the plural and the list operator of the plural also. We saw that the SQL query enhances the adoption of the operators from within the query itself, from the body inside the query body itself. We just have to refer to the work clause, and inside the work clause we do whatever we want. If we are just making an arithmetic operation or we're just making a comparison, it would be happening in this block. Yet, arithmetic operations, they are not advised to be happening here because they impose issues, data, security issues. But when we talk about the operators, range operators, this is an example of operators that we may refer to also as well as the logical and the, let's say, the yes, the logical operators we saw earlier. Now let's discuss this context of range operators. We have two keywords that we have to refer to, which are the between, not between. When we say the between, means we are going to check if a variable value, just a given value, is it in the range of two limits, borders, something like that. Or it's not there, not between. Between is a keyword, not between is a keyword, not with a space. Not with a space in between. This is a syntax that we have to refer to, that we have to respect. Let's have an example. Let's have an example talking about this between. We saw the grade and the GPA. It seems to be that I'm gonna show it to you again. Yes, here. The example actually of displaying the score of a student, the grade of a student based on his score. If he gets, per the example, if he gets a value between the 80 and 100, he would be actually awarded a success and let's say grade A. Let's suppose that the grade A is between for the values between 80 and 100. So to do so, I'm going to build a query for that. That's for your understanding only. It is a simple select. Actually, I'm going to display the profile of the student with all the details, whatever the details are. I may refer to, let's say, we have to respect the format. Means I have to build something similar to this in order to avoid any issues. Means I'm going to select the first name, the last name, and the score itself. I'm going to do it actually in an abstract way. Then after I'll refer back to this format. So for now, I'm going to just extract everything. Let's say from the, let's say, std, let's say gradient. STD gradient, it would be actually a table. Yeah. Here we have the work clause. Where what the student, let's say student. I'm going to respect the same field name. Okay, to respect the same field between. Let's say, yeah. Here I'm going to give the values actually, whatever. I'm going to give 100. Any examples of values? 100, sorry. The representation of this syntax here, I'm going to eliminate those because I'm not in a math class here. We are respecting a syntax, and between 80 and 100. So the range 80 and 100, lexically, I'm writing it. We are utilizing this logical operator at the end to indicate that this is the minimum limit and this is the maximum limit. The value of the C-test score, it has to be between those two givens. If I'd like to respect the format we were talking about, the first name and last name and so on, I have to change the what is it?
Doctor, excuse
Yeah.
me.
Yes. Tell me.
Zuena, she want to go in to the lecture, but Google Meet does not accept her.
Zuena.
Zuena, yes.
Zuena رسلت لها invitation. I sent her an invitation actually. Can she send actually a request now? Ask her to send a request now. I'm waiting for her only. I'm gonna send her a new request again for her only. Here again, she actually now let her check her email again. Let her check her email again. خلاص زوينة. نزلت لها دعوة ثانية. So I said that if I'd like to respect the format of the what we expect to get, actually I'm gonna say first name. So I just write the field title, the field header, last name, and the C test score, whatever. Yeah, so I'm just displaying only the fields I like. We search for, not everything in the entity as degraded. So only the first name, the last name, and the test score. Actually, the spelling here, it has to be respected. See, we have to respect the spelling. No more, no less. Very easy. And this is only for the context of, we are taking this example that the grade has to be between 80 and 100. We display the student details. We display the student details. If I'd like to ask you to change this query into displaying all the students that they are not in this range, means that they are not getting an A grade, they are not getting a mark in between 80 and 100. So what should we do? We just actually display the same, let's say format, we may respect the same format. I'm going to do copy paste. It's right here. I'm going to just modify that. In this query, we are going to display actually the students which they have a value, they are having a grade in between 80 and 100. And in this query, we'd like to display the students that they are not in this range, the failing students or the students with the grades not A. So just simply, instead of writing between, we just add the not between. So if they are not in this range, we are going to display them. We have another solution. We may solve this question differently. I'm going to minimize the view. So we may solve the second differently. Since the grade 100 is the top, we cannot have a student with 110 or 120. The maximum grade is 100 according to our scale. We may solve this question differently here, displaying the students that they are not in this range, they are not in this let's say category, they are not having values from 80 to 100, they are not between those two limits. Instead of utilizing the let's say the range operator, we may say where the C score is less than or equal to 100, and we utilize the logical operator and the same thing actually, the same spelling, greater than or equal to 80. We utilize the logical operator. So we may solve it differently. We may solve it differently. Here, actually, no. I'm sorry. I'm making a mistake here. See, I'm making a mistake. I'm repeating the same solution for this range, for this query here. It gives us the output of the students that they are in the range. Here, this way, we are displaying the students with a grade that they are having a grade in the range of 80, 100. since the value has to be less than 100 and greater than 80. So we are in the range. If we want to search for the students which they are not in this range, simply, it's much more easier. It's much more easier. Let me minimize and let me have another space. Great. I'm going to add it. Actually, in this case, just simply here, you have to tell that it is less than strict 80, less than strict 80. Simple. Strict less than 80. Very simple. Where if they are strict less than 80, so they are not in the range 80, 100. Why strict less than? Because we will not have students that they have grade more than 100. More than 100, there is no mark for that. There is no grade that we can display it, we can give it, or we can award it to a student more than 100. The scale we utilize or we follow is based on 100 grade. So this is a solution. This is second actually context. We search for the students that they are not in the range. And this is, we are repeating the same two solutions here, but we are utilizing the logical operators. We are not utilizing the range operators. Give me a second, please. Yeah. Great. So I'll leave this thing actually because this is not a slide. So Moza, she's contacting me. Seems to be Oswena. I believe so. So she has to close everything. I told her actually it's Oswena to close everything and to restart. Seems to be she's logging in through a mobile. So the list operator, the last group of operators, they are the list operators. And here we're going to check if a value is in a list. We are not taking a range from to, start and end, to limits, borders. No. We are checking group of values. If a given variable value belongs or is available in that list, value 1, value 2, as if we're making a test, The same thing actually, if it's not in the list, if it is in the list, or it's not in the list, we use the word in and we use the word not in. They are two keywords. The in is a keyword we utilize within the SQL queries, and the not in is another keyword that we utilize within the SQL queries also too. Actually, both of them, they are to be utilized for checking up the queries. It is the queries if not the query, but to check up if the variable value belongs to a list, is available in a list or is not available in a list. So let's dig in. The example given to us here actually is to check up the list group of candidates that they are actually having a need to create their candidature, let's say, based on their score, score. It means if their score is listed, something like that, if their score, the value listed inside the list. So we're going to, let's say, integrate those candidates. We have to display them at least. in this way. So we are going to test a candidate, let's say candidature. Come on, not the time. Candidature of a given student. If he's having a score that is available in a list, then we are going to display his details: first name, last name, score, and test date when he's going to have the test. This is actually one view. The other view we can go after actually is that if the test date of a candidature is in between two dates, for example, as per the example here for 5th March and 12th March, we're going to display also the details. In all cases, we are testing if a value is available in a list of values. If a value is available in a list of values. We may say that it is a range here. We may say that this is a range from 5 to 12. Thus, it is better to go behind the scopes, because if we test if the date is in between 5th of March and 12th of March, this is the range operator between 5th and 12th. So this is the range. We need to utilize the scores in order to check if the score is in the list of scores, in the list of mentioned scores, no more, no less. Let me just duplicate this slide, and later on I'll delete it. So the format, as we expect, it would be this way. We need the first name, the last name, the score, and the test. So that's let's go behind. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. So select. It's simple. I'm gonna first of all select everything without respecting the format, and after I'm gonna modify the format. Select from, let's say, std grading is the entity where actually the score date or the test date, we're going to check it that it is in a list. The list actually we're going to mention it somehow. Immediately I'm going to just utilize the normal parentheses. I'm going to say 75, 85, 90, 99, something. It's enough. It's enough. So we are having values. Those are actually scores. They are score-like. 75, 85, 90, 99. They are examples of scores. If the test date, no, I'm not going to use the test date. We said we meant, okay, that we're going to check the score. So the test score, see test score. The test score. If the test score, the student score is in the list, so it would be displayed. But here in this context, we are checking to display all the details. No, let's display the format now. I'm going to modify the star by displaying the first name, last name, score test, and test date. So I'm going to say first name, last name, see test score, because this is the one we need, and the test date. Very easy. That's it. That's all. So here I need 4 fields to be displayed according to the format we expect. If the condition test score is in the list, so we are going to display. I'm going to minimize. So, now in this way actually we are going to display the profile of the student once his score is one of those. We may have longer list, we may have shorter list, so all is possible. I'm gonna just solve this thing differently. If we need is to display the details, the student details, if he is not scored the given values. So now I'm gonna solve the same issue, yet we need to display. I'm going to just make a small modification. We are going to display the test date of each student with his profile if he's not having a score from the list given. If not having, he's not having a score from this list, let's say, for example. So simply, we are going to display the same profile, let's say, but his score has to be not in the list. That's it. Using this query, we are displaying the details of a student if he is having a score in this list, and using this query, come on, and using this query, we are displaying the details of a student if he is not scored one of those values. If he is not scored one of those values, so his profile is going to be displayed. And the profile here actually is summarized in the first name, the last name, the score test, the score, yes, and the test date. Any questions, please? Okay, great. So we continue since no questions. Great. So here actually we come to an end based on this SQL. Let me delete this slide. We do not need it. Come on, come on. Definitely. Great. Good. So this way actually we come to an end, managing the SQL and dealing with the back-end solution, the SQL Server. This is a small reminder. It is the chapter number 1 and from the book 2, we have the SQL Server 2008 guide. It is available to you also. Let's pass to chapter number 3. Since you don't have any questions, actually, let's go further. Give me a second, please. Are you seeing my presentation, please? I move to chapter number 3. Is it visible to you, please? Just declare to that to me. No, it has to be actually. Let me stop and redifuse it. Ahmed Al-Jabri, are you able to see the presentation, Ahmed Al-Jabri? Okay, great. So the topic number 3, I asked the question at the beginning of this class, which is how to communicate or to help the entities front end and the back end, the entities front end and back end to communicate. What does mean? We saw unit number 1, the chapter number 1, the ASP.NET interfaces and the file that we make, types and let's say properties that we may create using the ASP.NET technology. And in this unit number 2, we just finished now, we talked about the SQL Server and the queries that we may generate to retrieve data and to manage data inside from within the SQL Server itself, the database inside the SQL Server. So how to interoperate those two components? The SQL Server is in background. the ASP.NET, they are interfaces we see in front. We use controls to build interfaces. Okay, how to interoperate those things means we need to retrieve data from background to display it inside the ASP pages. Or the vice versa, we have data inside the ASPX, we are going to transmit them to the SQL Server to store. How to do this communication, this passerelle here. The solution, actually, amongst the solutions, we refer to the Addo.NET technology to do so. Addo.NET. This is another Microsoft product. It is a Microsoft delivery. It's one of the technologies that the Microsoft has given birth. And this technology, actually, we are going to use in this context to help ASPX pages communicate, or ASP.NET controls, ASP.NET controls in general, to communicate with the back-end solutions or technologies also. Front end and back end, remember the two words, front end. Zuzu, who is Zuzu? Zuena? Is she Zuena? Can I see her? I'm not able to see her yet. Great. We just here, let's pass and begin in the first definition to give in this context, Addo.NET. It is, as I said, it is a Microsoft product, starting with the Addo as the first component to define the Addo active data object. It is one technology we see its usability later on, that has to deal with the Addo.NET. The Addo is a technology that actually it is to be represented either upon a driver or a provider. This Addo deals with the Addo.NET to, let's say, finalize the help given to the ASPX pages and the backend solutions to communicate with each other. Yes, so the Addo.NET here is a sort of group of libraries. We defined in the ASPX the context, what does it mean, a library. Zuena, again, she said that yes, she logged in actually using a different email. That's good. I don't know what's the problem with her today. Yes. So the Addo.NET is a group of, let's say, gathered. There is a group, it's in plural, a group of libraries just helping the ASPX and the back-end solutions to communicate, no more, no less. And this communication actually it is to be either happening using a provider or a driver. A provider or a driver means you are going to have a dedicated system to help them communicate each other, the ASPX, remember, and the back-end solutions. To make them actually communicate one to the other, this driver or this sort of a provider, one of them, not both, one of them, to each communication channel, it has to be actually controlled using either the driver or the private, which is another solution. It is a context, it's a philosophy that you have to understand. The Addo is the context of a channel to communicate the media, or communicate the message or whatever. The Addo.NET is the technologies facilitating the interconnection, the bind and all the facilities to happen in between. Group of libraries, they are controlling this task, no more, no less. To make you understand more, here we talk about actually a business to be happening, and this business is ruled using a SQL Server database or any professional database management system, not mandatory to be a SQL Server. Any professional data store, it can be actually utilized. And since it is an enormous business and it is actually dealing with daily, let's say, cumulated amount of data, so we have to refer to a certain type of data management, which is the relational databases. The relational databases. I believe you know actually here the relation database is the context of interrogating the data and the data so differently. We have to have relations in between the entities, and we have to have a specific architecture relating entities inside the data store. So a relational database will be utilized to help the organization store its enormous data using a professional DBMS. Okay, this is the definition of a database. That's good. Yes, true. Absolutely true. How to access the data, how to access the data, and this enormous data, and this actually RDBMS, relational database, relational, let's say, database management system with its databases inside, actually using the Addo.NET and the .NET technology. The Addo.NET is the interface to help the organization reach those data from amongst the interfaces available. So the interface, whatever it is, ASPX or any other kind of let's say compatible interface, the Addo.NET would do the BA or the interface that plays the role of intermediate in between the data store and the interfaces of the application or the system or the business, whatever, wherever the data has to be displayed or where it has to be managed. Addo.NET. There are technologies also that they might be actually referred to in order to enhance the work of the Addo.NET. The Addo.NET is not the unique technology means, and by itself there are limitations. We see things that cannot be happening by they cannot be running by the Addo.NET by itself. Thus, there are other technologies provided also by the Microsoft only. We talk about the, as per an example, we talk about the ActiveX as a sort of integrated, or let's say built, not built in, but something that we can integrate inside the browser. Mainly, we talk about the Edge or the Internet Explorer. They are browsers 100% compatible with this technology. Nowadays, we may see it in different browsers, but from native, actually by default, it is customized to be running on the Edge and the Microsoft Internet Explorer browsers. For what actually to customize the functionality of the Addo.NET, whatever need or whenever it is needed. We may need, and we'll talk later on about assemblies and external libraries. So the ActiveX would help doing that. So if we need a functionality from the browser or from the operating system, so the ActiveX would help us in doing that. If we have a limit, and the ActiveX can provide that, so the ActiveX would be compatible with the Addo.NET group of libraries to fulfill and accomplish the task. So accessing another resource externally from the database management system, it can be happening. Yes, can means the answer is true using the ActiveX or any other similar technology. Mainly we talk about the ActiveX only for now. Yeah, examples of libraries or that the Addo.NET enhances or supports the system actually SQL client and the system SQL types and the system data. The system data is a global, let's say, it's a class. It's a class that it specifies how to connect. It specifies how to connect, mainly how to what are the responsible functions, classes, procedures we refer to in order to fulfill or finalize the connection in between whom and whom, the ASP.NET and the backend solution. The SQL client and the SQL types, actually those are two main, I did not dig in here yet, I'm still just talking about those two libraries. They are two main classes that we may refer to in order to make the SQL Server, any professional database in backend be read or receive queries. If we want to pass a query from the front end interface to the SQL Server, so we have to utilize one of those libraries. Let's say yes, libraries or classes. If we want to retrieve, not only insert, if we want to retrieve or make any update, also we have to utilize such a thing because we're going to pass a SQL query. Thus, as per example, SQL client is required. As per the title, we're going to read or insert or update. So, SQL client is one of the libraries that would help us do so. Inside of each of those, let's say, we may say domains, we may say namespaces, we may say classes. There are functions or predefined functions that we have to use whenever needed. We defined we said at the early of the chapter number 2 or unit number 2, the SQL Server actually it is coming with specified and customized and dedicated data types. They are actually mainly they have 4 data types given birth that they run and they are compatible only with the SQL Server. And most of them the date and time, the date time itself, not and time. There is date, there is time, there is date time. The date time is one of the data types that the SQL Server enhance. And to make him understand that, we just integrate the library for that, and so on. So for now, you have to understand that those are given the name namespaces. Why? Because they are storing and specifying how we are going to fulfill, let's say, a function or a group of functions. We are not willing to write the code. We are just going to call the name. The name of what? Of a function stored in here, or a procedure stored in here, somehow. We never need it. We never need it. What is the purpose? The purpose is to make an API connect to a background or back-end solution. An API talking about the ASP, ASP.NET, ASPX, back-end SQL Server database, whatever, or any similar. Any questions, please?
No, doctor, thank you.
Okay. Regarding your midterm, actually, it would be on the date. It is the Tuesday next week. Means it would be 27th. It would be on 27th. Your midterm is on 27th. 27th Tuesday. So I'm gonna type it to you here in the chat box. Your in semester 1 is on Tuesday 27th. 27th, sorry. PH. الثلاثاء القادم الأسبوع القادم ليس هذا الأسبوع. Any questions, please, up to here? Any requests before I continue? Still, we have 2-3 minutes. Let's utilize them. Let's utilize those 2 minutes. Yes, Sahab.
اليوم
ما سمعتك. I did not hear you.
المد نفس هذا اليوم الاسبوع الجاي.
No. يوم الثلاثاء الأسبوع الجاي. يوم الثلاثاء الأسبوع الجاي.
محاضرة ثانية يعني؟
ها؟ ما سمعت.
محاضرة ثانية.
أي المحاضرة الثانية، نعم هي.
لو الأسايمنت كيف نروح؟
الأسايمنت لحد آخر الأسبوع. لحد آخر يس. until 29th لحد تاريخ 29. ما سمعتك يا أحمد، الصوت غريب عندك.
خلاص أمور طيبة إن شاء الله.
تم إن شاء الله. We have to finish this unit number 3, and because of this only, I said it has to be on Tuesday. الأسبوع اللي بعد لا بيكون أسبوع 8. Still we have 1 week to go. This is for the practical. Utilizing the libraries, the last thing I'm gonna just present to you is the connection that we have to go after in order to help a front-end API connect to a back-end API. A front-end API to be connected to a back-end API either with a continuous process or just whenever needed. In the sense of whenever we click a button, the query will be submitted and a response will be retrieved. Or there have to be a continuous display of data into a grid something, a table that has to display all the data from a database table in the front end interface. It has to update continuously, to make updates continuously. Thus, we talk about a connection mode. Either we are in a connected architecture mode or a disconnected architecture mode. I give you the examples. If we are just creating a query to happen only if we click a button. Only that time. Other than that, we disconnect everything and we gain time and we gain space in memory and so on. This is a disconnected architecture. So the connectivity and the request to be passed only when needed. only when needed. It's not a context of disconnected, so offline. We talk about needed, we create the connectivity and to finalize. Not needed, we don't do. For this context, he connected architecture via which we see that there is a continuous update to be given to a control. So no need to define what is a control here. The control we saw it in unit number 1. But if needed to be updated continuously and continuously displayed with an updated value to the end user, so we have to talk about a connected architecture. Connected architecture, disconnected architecture, those are two modes where the Addo.NET can act in order to finalize the work, which is the connectivity, which is the relationship or the interrelation in between the front-end APIs and the back-end solutions. Thank you very much for today. I'll see you next class, inshallah.